Well, without further ado, then I would like to start and welcome to Abdo Wahba's session at JITA on conference. We are working towards a world in which all development and application of science and technology contributes to a good future and well-being for the coming generations under the spirit of finding the others. In the spirit of this, a few house rules and announcements for most of you. Again, please mute yourself as only one has not yet done, and turn your videos on. Thank you for that. If you want to ask questions, just please raise your hand or just post it in the chat. As you likely all know already, this will be made public on YouTube and other channels. And at the end, towards the end of the session, I will post the upcoming sessions in the chat. And with all that said, we already had a very curious questions in regards on how many tools you are going to present to us. Abdo, over to you, and thank you for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. Thank you everyone for taking the time to attend. I'm pretty sure you are kind of in information overload mode after having this full day of work, or at least full day of attending all of those inspiring sessions. The last time I've been in a conference where I spent most of the day attending interesting stuff, I remember the speaker who basically came in after lunch. He looked at the audience. It was a face-to-face conference. So in the same place, he looked at the audience and I was like, shit, you guys are falling asleep. And okay, you know what? Everyone stand up and let's do some exercise. I mean, lucky for you, we're not in the same place. Otherwise, I would have done the same. But today I'm going to have to rely on how refreshing the topic is going to be, which is basically 3 to 5 non-cliché tools against bullshit, or 3 to 5 non-cliché tools to navigate a world of bullshit. Now, fair warning, I've attended a few sessions this morning and I saw that people are very nice and very sweet. Yeah, I'm going to curse. Yeah, so just expect this to happen every now and then. If this is a bit too much for you, please feel free to leave quietly. I will not be offended. I will not take it personally. I respect people's preferences. However, I have my own. Second thing, I'm not a YouTube channel, so I hope that we engage a little bit in this session together, especially at the end, because I am planning to make some wild allegations and I would appreciate to have them challenged. That's the entire reason why I'm doing this, to have my wild allegations challenged. However, let's do it at the end when they're all finished and when you at least kind of have seen the full picture. So, a session about bullshit. It takes a special kind of person to kind of attend something like this. And when I thought about who would be interested in something like this, I kind of thought, okay, maybe people would be just intrigued by the title and curious about what I have to say, or what the hell, you know, would be inside a session entirely about facing bullshit. Or someone would be, you know, like me, I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take this anymore. And I'm really, you know, had it up to here with bullshit and I need to do something about it. And for those of you who don't feel included in those two groups, of course, there's another catch-all group, as I like to do as an engineer, generally. So wild allegation number 1, to jump right into it, I claim that the most commodity produced, bought, and sold in this world is, in fact, bullshit. Every human alive has been bullshitted, has produced some bullshit, or has experienced some bullshit in their vicinity of sorts. And to back up my claim, I have a bit of anecdotal proof. In fact, I want to do some experiment. I want everyone to raise their hands, either physically or in the Zoom functionality. And we're going to do this TikTok style, you know, which basically raise your hand. So everyone raise your hand, either your hand or this, you know, this whole in Zoom. Yeah. Okay. So, and lower your hand if you have experienced any of the following. Like you heard it, you said it, someone said it in front of you, someone told it to you, so you read it somewhere, someone was kind of propagandizing it or whatever. Yeah. So lower your hand if you have experienced the following. You can achieve anything if you work hard enough. If you experience this, put your hand down. Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook in his garage, so you can be the next big thing in tech. Eating meat is the root of all evil. Don't fly, because if we fly less, we will save Earth from global warming. If people work from home a lot, they will slack off and not do their job. You don't need to get paid for your internship. The experience you will get is priceless. Study hard, go to university, get good grades, and your future is secure. You can learn anything if you put your mind to it. Insert any politician's campaign promise here. If you want something bad enough and work hard enough, you can change the world. I'm not starting a company to make money. I'm starting a company to change the world. So all hands down yet? I mean, from what I see that all hands are down, but in case anyone has their hand up and I don't see it, I really advise you to rethink the world you're living in, because you might be too sheltered from the real one that everyone else has been experiencing for the most part of their life, at least. I also had my fair share of bullshit. Yeah. Like why am I talking about this? I definitely have had my fair share of bullshit. I've been building tech products and doing community development for the past 15 years in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. I was one of many on the streets in the Egyptian revolution and all the aftermath after that, which was a very interesting roller coaster of pure intrinsic high quality graded bullshit. And I believed in the startup dream. I started my own company, brought it from nothing to hundreds of thousands of active users and millions of traffic. And it's being sold as we speak, hopefully. So for me, those three experiences have had me dragged through and swim through oceans and mountains of bullshit, because when you go through those three experiences, obviously, and others as well, you have to come to terms that a lot of the things that you believe in and a lot of the things that you think are true are in fact bullshit, and you have to face them. The question is, what the fuck is bullshit? I mean, we can smell it, we can feel it, but what exactly is bullshit? So just to kind of bring us all on the same page, I like to define bullshit as follows. I mean, imagine there's a chocolate cake. Yeah, chocolate cake, sweet chocolate. Everybody loves chocolate, or almost everybody loves chocolate. When you eat it, there is endorphins. So you're not just enjoying what you're eating, you're also happy that you ate chocolate. Even afterwards, you're happy that you ate chocolate. But imagine a chocolate cake just with a little tiny piece of shit baked into the batter. Yeah. And that's exactly, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah? You won't really taste the shit, but you will feel that something is off. Yeah? I hope no one has to go through this physical experience, because it's extremely revolting. And don't ask me how I know this. But this is basically what I want to say. Bullshit is the shit chocolate cake of information. Yeah. The chocolate cake is some form of truth, some honest message, some emotional connection that whoever is giving you this message kind of addresses or taps into, something that tickles your hardwiring, yeah, but with a little bit of shit inside it, some lie, some bias, some weird agenda, or some ill intention or whatever, yeah. So in essence, bullshit is shit info baked into a chocolate cake message. This is what I mean when I talk about bullshit. So why do we, why is it important, right? Why do I want to talk about it? Why do I think this is important? I mean, if your stomach is churning a little bit, or if you feel disgusted from the image that I painted right now, you know exactly why I think this is important. It's important really to sniff it out. Nobody likes to be fed shit chocolate cake. Nobody likes to be fed some bullshit and work with it as if it's a truth. So the question is, how do we sniff out the shit? Yeah. So for me, in order to kind of walk you through the process, I want to take you back in time, at least, to the year 2003. Year 2003, I was studying in university, studying engineering in one of the shittiest universities on earth, in my opinion. Ahmed, I'm guessing you're Egyptian. It's Ain Shams Engineering University. So yeah, as you can see, I love it. In that year, that was the US war on Iraq and Saddam Hussein. And there was something special about this war because it was launched on TV at night. And the night, you know, you open CNN and this is what it was looking like, you know, green screens being filmed by in infrared cameras, everything happening at night, looked really like you're playing a video game of sorts. Back then it was maybe, I don't know, Doom or whatever. Yeah. And anyway, the next day I had a lecture in university. So as a, you know, as a gentleman pretending to be a good student, I go to the university to attend the lecture. And it was a lecture of mechanics. But the professor decided not to give a lecture about mechanics, and he decided to give a lecture about the Iraq War. And he said, listen, guys, this war is on TV. And TV is not reality. I mean, for fuck's sake, it's called Operation Shock and Awe. Yeah. Therefore, I want to give you something very important to learn and to use in life. I want you to listen to what I have to say now. Don't believe everything you hear and believe half of what you see. Okay? Let me repeat it again. Don't believe everything you hear and believe half of what you see. Now, sitting in the audience of this lecture, yeah, you feel, okay, fine, that's nice. Sounds like wisdom, you know, from a distance. But, you know, in essence, how the fuck does that work? I mean, do I not even believe you now, or should I believe half of what you're saying? You standing in front of me as the professor, is that real, or should I kind of decide that my eyes are deceiving me, or, you know, what the fuck is going on? At least this is how I felt, and I wouldn't blame you if you feel the same right now. Luckily, this interesting professor decided to give us a little bit more, and he said, you know what? In order to be able to apply this, you need to transform your mind into the Sahara Desert. Not just the Sahara Desert, transform it into a Sahara Desert with something a little bit, with a little bit of extra something. Namely, this image. Consider your mind is the Sahara Desert and there's a safe in the middle. The Sahara Desert is very harsh. It's a very harsh environment, but the safe is something very safe, very cozy, something when you lock something in, it's safe, it won't go anywhere. And your mind should have two areas. One is the area of doubt, or the doubt desert, which is the desert. And the safe is the certainty safe, or the area of certainty. And whenever you are served a little piece of chocolate cake or some piece of information, you have to put it in the desert and doubt it. And let the desert do its thing on it, like beat down on it. The Sahara Desert is super dry and it's super hot and it's really, really a harsh environment. And then when the desert does its thing and you realize that this piece of information is worthy, you can lock it into the safe because it has now a high degree of certainty. Now I want to take this image a little bit further and explore tools that are inspired by the desert to strip away the shit from the shit chocolate cake. The Sahara Desert is very famous for being extremely hot. There's a lot of sun and heat. I'm not talking about the sun on the beach in the North Coast or like in the Nordsee or in Spain. I'm talking about this monster here, this beast, the sun. Sun, a lot of radiation, a lot of heat. Sahara Desert gets temperatures over 50 degrees in the morning. It's extremely dry. Radiation is like intense. It beats down on you as if, you know, you're carrying a few tons on your head. It also has a lot of sandstorms. Yeah? And if you experience any of those sandstorms, you definitely cannot see your hand when you're in a sandstorm, let alone, I mean, you can hardly breathe even. In contrast to a lot of heat, there's a lot of cold. I mean, at night, it goes sub-zero on days where it goes above 50 in the morning. So you're kind of being pasteurized if you live in this area. Last but not least, the Sahara Desert has infinite time. It's timeless. If you go there, you cannot really know when is when. It has been there forever. Planets that have died have deserts on them. So it's kind of, there's a timeless element to it. And every component of the desert is a tool that I want to give you that I've been using, and it has been working for me at least, to kind of figure out and navigate bullshit. So the first tool, the sun. Yeah? The sun and heat, they break down things to their basic elements. And this is what I would advise you to do if you encounter any piece of information. You break it down to its basic elements. If the elements are shit, then the message is bullshit. Yeah. Evaporate the chocolate, let's see what remains. If there's shit in there, then it's entirely bullshit. One of the biggest manifestations of bullshit is aggregate numbers, or one of the biggest manifestations of chocolate cakes that can contain shit in them is aggregate numbers. Yeah. For example, vaccine effectiveness. And you say, okay, this vaccine is effective for 70%. Is that good? Is that bad? How did you calculate this number? Can I break it down to elements that in the end correspond to someone counting incidents, very raw data? Yeah. I was watching a few videos this morning, and I learned that one of the interesting things in the political campaigns in Germany right now is that taxes taken from cannabis can be somewhere between 1 to 2 billion euros estimate. Okay, cool. Where did this 2 billion euros come from? You're estimating something in the future. Maybe you're playing with the numbers. If we can break it down and see, okay, here is how you built this business case. Here is how you put together this big, shiny, flashy number, and it holds water, then the message is not really full of shit. The second tool is the sandstorm. Basically, try to strip any message you get from its bling. There's a lot of effort put into showmanship and dramatization. A lot of effort just to kind of make the message shiny, you know? And it's very important to distinguish between the rhetoric and the substance. I mean, do you know how much time I've even invested in trying to make this kind of presentation shiny and entertaining and nice for you to hear? I can tell you, I've invested maybe a few days of work. Yeah. And I mean, you can assume maybe that I don't have bad intentions, but you cannot really assume it about everything. You know? Also ask what is the bullshit behind the bullshit? Like, what is the motivation? What is this person trying to achieve? It doesn't have to be good or bad, but what is the motivation of this person? Why? Why are they saying this in this way? Is the person communicating to me wearing a uniform or lending credibility from their title? You know, or lending credibility from someone with a title? Are they borrowing credibility from the channel they are using? Are they broadcasting on the official TV network or on a big YouTube channel that has some credibility? Or is this person believable because just a lot of people believe or follow him or her? Yeah. This is a big factor. This is a lot of bling. This is a lot of shiny things around the message that people use to feed you some shit. Are they using big words or shiny statements? I mean, for me, there is one of the most interesting things is, or the terms is trend jacking. Yeah, this is something in online marketing, trend jacking, which means we see what the trend and try to create a viral campaign around it. But in essence, it just means look at whatever the fuck everyone is talking about and just talk about it. So just because it has a shiny word doesn't make it more important or more effective. I mean, fuck, I use this all the time, honestly. I play to this bias in whenever I work and I want to give some project some importance. I try to give it a name that is a little bit unusual or a little bit blingy. Yeah. All of a sudden, people focus on this. It is part of our hard wiring and we have to fight it somehow. Last but not least, always think about what is the most basic version of the message. What is the one-line summary? You know? For example, whenever I hear something about blockchain, I dug deep into this topic and I can say blockchain is some form of database with extremely unhackable security. And it is very, very, very hard to fake the data in this database, but it has a lot of overhead. But in essence, it's just data aggregated in a different way than usual. Yeah. So if someone says blockchain is the key to the future, I say, really? Why? It's, you know, in the most basic form, it's a glorified way to store data with a lot of certification, a lot of security. So why is that? Strip it away from its bling. The next element I've mentioned is the cold. I mean, the naked freezing nights. When you're alone in the desert at night, in the very, very cold weather, you have to come to terms with a lot of facts. You know? A lot of the daily annoyances, a lot of the weird things that stress me out because my pants were not fucking good, well ironed or whatever. All of this just evaporates. Yeah? And this is what we need to do with those messages. You know? Okay, what are the fucking cold hard facts here? Okay, remove the bling, remove all of that. What are the facts? What is the opinion? What is the fact? What is the real context? Yeah? Where is this coming from? Is this some sort of isolated piece of information somewhere, or is there a background? Because life is a continuum. You know, nothing is discrete. Everything has a beginning and an end. And if you pick something from the middle, it just doesn't appear out of thin air. And what is the impact on the ground? You know, how does this affect the regular Joe and Jane? If you hear that a vaccine creates blood clots or 1 in a million cases of blood clots, does this mean that you will have blood clots if you get it? You know what else, creates the risk of blood clot? Smoking, cholesterol, obesity, heart failure, heart conditions, birth control, anything that plays with your hormones, yeah, hereditary issues. Why aren't we afraid of this? You know, going to any form of surgery, sitting still for a long period of time, even if it's just a few hours, you know, so context, you know, how does this really impact me? Does it really impact the people, or what does it do? And the last element of the desert that I would like to address is infinite time. You have to let the desert do its thing. You have to let it work on it. Yeah? You have to let doubt happen. Doubt is good. Doubt is not bad. It keeps you alert and it keeps you aware that whatever happens around you is not necessarily 100% true. I would advise that doubt should be part of your daily activity and doubt things for as long as you can. Then, if the message you receive stands the test of the desert, the heat, breaking it down to the basic elements, the sandstorm, stripping away the bling, the cold, you know, what are the facts, what is the context, and it has survived for enough amount of time, then you can lock it in the safe. And when it's locked in the safe, it means it has a degree of certainty that you're willing to take on in your life. Yeah. And the more you exercise this, the more you get better at it. Obviously, the more you're better at it, and the more things you lock in the safe, the more you know about what should be in and what should be kept out of the safe. So if I can give you one thing and one thing only to take with you, it's don't believe everything you hear and believe half of what you see. Let the desert do its thing. You know? Find the most basic elements, strip its bling, make it face face the cold hard facts and give it some time. Those were my tools. You know, I'm trying to share them. I'm not saying those are my tools, so don't use them. There's no copyrights here. But I advise you to also find your own tools. Maybe you can start here, but everyone has their own tools. And that would be it for me. And this would be actually the call to action, or what I would really like us to go through. Find your own tools and perhaps challenge what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdo. I see quite a few natural challengers in the audience. So really looking forward to some reflections here. I don't see a hand raised right now. Abdo, if you, yep. But there's one time tag that came to mind when you showed the first live streamed military intervention, which I actually have a prior one when Iraq was bombing Israel. I remember sitting during my student days how the rockets hit Jerusalem. I remember that one. That was in the early 90s. But actually, 2003, a documentary came out, and that's The Fog of War. That's McNamara, and a lot of what I heard reminded me of the fog of war and the need of sense making in such situations. So not really related to bullshit, but really asking myself how much of it is happening on a day-to-day basis in the organizations we're operating in. And there's actually a question from Jörg, who first of all says, "What a shit show." So
nice.
How do you see the difference between your bullshit, propaganda, marketing, PR, or manipulation?
Well, that's for you to decide. I can tell you what I think, but you have to decide whether I'm doing bullshit, propaganda, marketing, PR, or manipulation or not. I will definitely tell you I'm not, just as anyone who is doing propaganda. So it's kind of a paradox if I tell you that to believe me, and you know, there's a recursive paradox here a little bit. Now, having said that, it's all about how you digest the information. Yeah. What I'm saying is you shouldn't believe everything that you hear, and you should believe half of what you see. So if you take this into consideration, put whatever I said into some form of doubt, and doubt it for a while, and let it sit for a while, and try to kind of strip away, okay, is this person saying that? And if you don't have a conclusion for the time being, that's okay. Give it time. Things will evidently, time has this interesting effect. You know, there's the Japanese saying that goes like, if you wait long enough by the river, you will find the enemies of the bodies of your enemies floating by. So sometimes you just have to give things some time. And eventually you will figure out, okay, this was bullshit, or this wasn't bullshit, or still I'm inconclusive, and that's okay. And the whole point is to kind of be able to live with this in this state. It's okay.
So maybe a question could be, who grants you that time? There's a question from Ahmed who says, first of all, thanks for sharing. However, one issue, and this is maybe the organizational aspect of this all, granting time, one issue that he sees or experienced is that no one wants to look for shit in the desert. So while you're doing that, you're mostly on your own. Ahmed, yes. +1 right here.
Yes. Yes, it is a very lonely endeavor. You can share your views with others, but it is a lonely endeavor. And sadly, it is the case. I mean, if you're a lone wolf person, that's fine. I think that should be okay for you. But for a lot of people, it is not. However, that is also one of the reasons why people don't do it. It's not easy. It's part of it is that you have to kind of be in a continuous state of healthy doubt about a lot of things around you. Yeah, it can, if you have some tendency to go into OCD or whatever, it can flip over and be completely destructive. But you know, a little bit of poison is medicine. And what I'm trying to say is, you know, it's a bit in that direction.
Again, my question would there be, how do you make a career in 99.9% of the organizations? Likely the answer is bullshit, you don't. But Ahmed is actually on fire asking, what are your ideas about what to do after being good at shooting bullshit down? It feels sometimes like it's a world full of bullshitters celebrating each other.
Well, the choice is yours at the end. For me, I selectively confront this. I'm more of a confrontational person, and when I feel the need to confront it because this bullshit is affecting something I'm doing, I will go up and say bullshit, and I deal with the consequences, and I'm okay with them. The consequences are quite polarizing. Like one of the consequences is that I'm not very liked in all circles. People either like me or hate me, nothing in between, and I'm fine with that. Yeah. But this is not a consequence everyone is willing to handle. And therefore, you have to kind of pick your battles a little bit and decide when to really call bullshit or to confront, or sometimes even, okay, you're just going to walk away. And that's okay. You know, I'm not going to say you have to be a hero and, you know, clean all the bullshit in the world, because this itself is pure intrinsic bullshit. There's no chocolate cake here. Yeah. So that's why I would say, choose what to do about it. But first, if you identify, this is a very big step. What to do becomes easier and a matter of choice.
Choice you have. Sorry, did I just interrupt someone here? No, I don't believe so. Is a choice you have, and I'm coming a little bit back to organizations of a certain size and of career, and that connects me to the question of leadership and maybe the one person you're directly reporting to. And in that context, stripping the bling. And in my personal experience with bosses is those with the most bling, never call them out on bullshit. That's going to be the last day if you wanted to be in your company, and you're likely going to say that's your best day in your life. You're leaving that company likely. Anyway, over to you, Abdo.
Well, like I said, I mean, for me, the fact that I am confrontational in this topic, it makes me choose a little bit, or be willing to sacrifice a few things in how I work and where I work. For example, my rule of thumb in companies or organizations that I like to work, they have to be in a size somewhere between 50 and 250. And I have to be reporting to like the top decision maker in the company. Otherwise, not my thing. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter how much I get paid. It doesn't matter which cause I am working on. Fuck it. I'm not doing it. Why? Because rule of thumb for me, above 250 people, the amount of bullshit for me is intolerable. And I spend too much time fighting bullshit versus doing actual work and adding actual value. Yeah. This is a choice I have to make. People's tolerance towards bullshit is not the same. Yeah. If in a situation where your boss is full of shit, but you really want to keep the job, it is your choice. But the important thing is that you know that he or she is full of shit and you deal with them accordingly. Confronting it is not always the best solution. It is a choice. Yeah. And you have to take the responsibility of this choice. And if you choose to say, fuck you, I'm leaving because you're full of shit, that is your choice. The consequences you will have to bear. Maybe it's the best day of your life. Maybe it's also a start of the best part of your life, or maybe it's the worst. I don't know. No one can predict the future. Yeah. My point is, it is important to be able to sniff out the shit. What you do afterwards is up to you. Yeah.
I've read out most of the questions. I don't know if somebody wants to unmute and actually ask a question directly. Ahmad or Bassem. Bassem just joined a little while back.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't join the most of the presentation due to a meeting. I'm really sorry about that. But I have a question to Abdo about bullshit with data and bullshit with A/B testing. I don't know if it was mentioned. Yeah. I don't know if it was mentioned in the presentation or not. But sometimes, like, there is like features or things are waiting for super long time because like you cannot tell if it's succeeding or not, and sometimes it's a game being played. Like, is it working better or not? Let's wait for one other round. Let's test again and again and again, and it takes super long time. So how do you call out bullshit when you see bullshit happening around the data and being data driven?
This is a very specific question about a very general problem. So I will try to kind of give you some concrete answer, although it's going to be super hard. You can put together a lot of bullshit with data. You can create a very, very nice shit chocolate cake with data. If you cut out the data points that make the final aggregation look the way you want, or if you include and exclude data points in order just to kind of manipulate the final aggregation of the data point, to make the average in the range that you want to display, no one will kind of stop you, and no one will really spot it unless they dive deep in what you've been doing and figure out, aha, he's been fucking with the numbers, and he's kind of giving us false averages to kind of advance his agenda or her agenda. Yeah. Now, having said that, this is part of the craft of product management in general, to be able to kind of figure out whether this data is conclusive, not conclusive. Does it give us a certain direction, or does it not give it a certain direction? And it's also important to kind of figure out whether this is worth doing again or not. And part of the craft is to be able to make such decisions in a kind of decisive and assertive way, to say, okay, fuck it, it's not worth it. This thing is really not conclusive. So let's wait, let's give it X more time and then cut it short. Yeah. Sometimes it's not really an issue of bullshit, but it's more an issue of not being able to make a decision and move forward. Yeah. I've faced this multiple times where we're doing some A/B tests or some experiment, and the data is just not showing us any conclusive results. And it's a question of how much resources do you want to spend on this? You want to keep it running? Are you really wasting time, losing effort, or something like this? Or is it running and you can afford to keep it up for a little bit longer? And if yes, then for how longer? And then you will cut it short because it's not worth anyone's time to keep this up again. And that's basically where I am at regarding this point. But for sure, I mean, aggregate numbers, yeah. I mean, I can use the same data set to produce very, very different aggregations.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Abdo.
Abdo, in the real world, those basic elements, where are they being found?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
The basic elements you're talking. I mean, the high level of aggregation being prone for bullshit with all that lies under that pile.
Mm-hmm.
Where are the basic elements most likely to be found?
Inside, it's always inside the message. You know, you have to do some detective work a little bit to kind of figure out what are the basic elements that create this aggregation. You know, let's take an example. let's think about, let's go to the example I mentioned. Yeah, one of those examples is if cannabis is legalized in Germany, it should produce 1 billion euros of taxes, 1 to 2 billion euros, right? Okay, how did this number come to the surface? Yeah, like what plus what plus what equals the 1 billion euros? Yeah, how, where? Yeah, where would you look for this? You would kind of look somewhere online or look into, like, at the very least, ask the person, how the fuck did you come up with this number? Yeah, show me your numbers. Yeah, this is something I do on a daily basis. When someone says, yeah, hey, if we do this, if we implement this feature, if we implement that feature, there's huge potential there. Okay, cool, huge potential. How much? You say, yeah, I think we can make 2 million euros a year if this is the market size. Cool. How did you come up with the market size? The market size is something very subjective. It's an art form. You know, how you decide what the market size is. I want to understand your assumptions. Okay, they say, yeah, if we calculate all the budgets of our customers and take 10% of them, it will be the 2 million euros. Yeah, we'll never get 10%, number one. Number two, the budgets are not 20 billion. And you know, this is where you really dig deep and try to, okay, here are the basic elements. Yeah, for this cannabis thing, it's probably someone made an assumption on, okay, the current consumption of cannabis is X, and this X is, or the current circulation of cannabis in Germany is, I don't know, let's say 10 billion euros worth. Yeah, and if it gets legalized, this 10 billion euros will be invoiced, and we will have, I don't know, 15% or 14%, 19% value added tax or whatever. And based on that, the 90% is 1 billion. Yeah. And then you can challenge every single element. Okay, you know, the circulation, based on what? You're saying that this is a black market, you know, how can you figure this out? Okay, and then you go deeper and deeper and deeper until you find, okay, I looked into the number of farms, I counted the number of joints being sold on the fucking streets, and I reached that there are 100 billion joints sold every year, and you know, and then you can take it from there. Yeah? Those are the basic elements.
I love that you're mentioning the streets, because that's my base hypothesis. It's the basic elements can be found on the ground. That's it's yes. Voices from the field. It's basic sense making, and it goes against anything that larger organizations are truly interested in. And I just share with you, when I started working was at Compact Computers, now HP, and people in big meetings would instantly shut up when somebody stood up and said, from my experience as a salesman, everybody shut up, because no one ever sold a fucking computer in their life. So that was the end of the story, and everybody just said yes. And another thing resonates so much, give it time, is why do we sprint our way through little projects in order exactly never have time to reflect on the bullshit that's being fed, and stripping the bling, often hidden as culture, is probably the one that resonates tremendously with everyone. I reckon. I'm very curious on Ahmed, what your background is. You've been sharing in 3 sessions now, and I'd be just I have my assumptions on your background, and maybe you can share a little bit and ask another question, because you've been great sharing questions here.
I think Ahmed is frozen.
Is Ahmed frozen? Is Bassem still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think Ahmed is frozen.
So your background is software engineering.
Me or Ahmed?
Bassem, yours is software engineering?
Yeah, I used to be an iOS developer. I became a product manager some years ago. Yeah, and I'm still surviving in the product area somehow.
Abdo, how many tools have you presented now? For me it was 3. What are the next two? Or what was it?
The answer is still on the slide. You know? There's the sun, there's the sandstorm, there's the cold, and there's the time. And if you count the desert as another tool,
okay, all right. That was my question then. Okay, all right, okay, all right. Then it is 5 taking the greater bit.
Yeah.
Any last reflections, Abdo, that drove you maybe to spending these days on preparing to sharing this?
I don't know what drove me to do it. Yeah, Thomas wrote me, said, "Hey, we're doing this. Do you have something to share?" I told him, "I don't know what. Yeah, interested, but what should I talk about?" He said, "You know, you've been engaging in those sessions, and I like the way you kind of tear things down." And I said, "Okay, fine, I can talk about bullshit." And then yeah, I asked him, "Can I swear?" And he said, "Yeah, you can." So I said, "Okay, I'm in."
Fantastic, fantastic. I just really appreciate it because we do systemic design. We apply systems thinking. There is obviously the notion of sense making involved, and I myself, I'm a systemic organizational consultant. So there is that that bit there, and I have never experienced such a concise presentation that, in my world, embraces all of it in one presentation. So from my end, wholeheartedly, thank you, Abdo, for what you shared.
No problem. I can ask the audience a question and
please
think about it. What happens after you have a lot of stuff locked up in the safe, and it becomes kind of a function of what else gets allowed to enter the safe? Like if you have a lot of things that have passed the test of the desert, and you decide that they hold a high degree of certainty, and they are in the safe, they help you then decide on what's next, whether you like it or not. You know? And what happens then? You know, if you have a lot of things already in a level of certainty, and you receive a new point, how do you overcome the bias of all of those things in your safe? Didn't see that coming.
I'd have an answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a more philosophical answer. I would start wondering. You were talking about being awake, to be alert, to never stop.
Not awake. I don't do awake.
Sorry?
I'm always asleep.
Okay. For me, aware and awake correlate. So that might be the topic for a whole next talk on how to be aware whilst you're asleep. Yeah, so dreaming with your eyes open. But that would be never stop being curious, never stop to assess, and maybe never believe in certainty as it's naturally artificial.
Yeah, fair enough. Any other ideas?
Yeah, Abdo, I'm sorry I joined late, so I'm trying still to get to the metaphors that you used in your question, but probably I'll watch actually the recording and get back to you with some answer.
No,
it's an interesting question.
I mean, one thing that comes with the whole desert and safe thing is that every once in a while in your life, you have to open the safe, bring everything that is in it out again and put it in the desert and doubt it once again. And then decide what goes back in and what needs to be discarded. Because otherwise, if you know, the times change and whatever you believe in has to kind of more or less be re-examined every once in a while. But by once in a while, I mean every relatively long period of time. Because otherwise you will you become mentally ill from the anxiety and the stress and the whole OCD and self-doubt. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Go ahead.
I was late too. I was traveling all day, so sorry for being late. I have to look the replays as well. But I get the message about this is a safe. And the thing is, I'm talking about our basement. We keep saving so many things, and we have to sort them out occasionally. And question is, what remains out of the valuables that you keep in the basement or in the safe? Is the question if what you value give them, and what values of yours are changing. And I'm talking about sustainability so much. And when I grew up, you know, there were ideas we had about green developments that were great. And now I start challenging them and think about maybe not so great, or we talk about hydrogen. And then I listen to experts talking about hydrogen for airplanes. And they say, yeah, but the extreme climate impact of hydrogen is actually worse than synfuel. Fuel. So things are changing constantly, and it's reassessing the value as well, in my opinion.
That's why you have to kind of give it a lot of time. That's why you have to let the desert do its thing. You have to, you know, let the sun beat down on it, break it down to the basic elements. You have to strip it from all of the rhetoric and bling. Like, for example, I can give you a direct experience, like one very personal opinion that you can, you know, examine yourself. At one point in time, I believe that if every individual did their responsibility and their homework towards the environment would be better. I honestly no longer believe this. I believe that the biggest levers is not on the individual basis, it's on the industrial basis. Those are the biggest levers. So if someone comes and says, hey, Abdo, you shouldn't travel by plane because because otherwise the environment is fucked, I would tell them fuck off, because in the last year the air travel was 60 to 80% down and emissions were less than 4% down. So fuck off. Yeah. This is something I truly kind of shifted on, you know. Okay. And I can also say that, you know, having gone through what I mentioned in the presentation, I can tell you that there's a lot of money and effort and time invested in making individuals believe that everything is their fault as individuals, while the people who are actually have the biggest negative effects and can have the biggest positive effects just are hiding behind those marketing messages and propaganda and all this bullshit. So this is one thing I kind of shifted, and a lot of other things I had shifted, but it's not about what my beliefs have shifted. It's about how you can really examine bullshit chocolate, like shit info chocolate cakes that have been thrown at you, and decide whether you want to, what you want to do with them, or you can sniff out the shit in them and decide what is the cake and what is the shit.
But it does start with the man in the mirror. I'm very sure about this, because you have to change on an industrial scale, but the industry doesn't want to change. It's dinosaurs. You have to move them around. It's the individuals that have to start the process, and that's what's so important in Cheetah and other efforts. So I'm really sure that we have to do a lot there, but I don't disqualify the individual. It's if the individual doesn't move, then it's an excuse. So we all have the possibility to do a little bit, and the more of us doing a little bit, the more we change.
Yes, I don't disagree. I see it slightly differently. Sebastian, I don't want to take this discussion any further when it's time for the next session. That's why.
I already unmuted to end what was called purposely a shit show. What Abdo shared with us, and for those who came a little bit later, like Leah and Juliana, Abdo kindly did advise, if you have children in the room, this is a +18 conversation. There will be swearing going on. So, and it will also be recorded and made available on YouTube and Not YouTube Kids. Abdo, thank you so much for this truly enlightening shit show. I can only urge anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to watch it. Yeah, thank you for joining in this session. Thank you. Bye bye, Abdo. Thank you.